The airport was a chaos of hurried footsteps and muffled announcements. But I saw him again, same sharp jawline, same dark eyes that seemed to carry a story I wasn't ready to hear. 6 flights in a row, from Chicago to Seattle to Miami. And there he was, always in my peripheral vision, like a ghost I couldn't shake. By the time I spotted him at JFK, leaning against a pillar with a paperback in hand, I knew this wasn't chancy, it was something else entirely. My name is Ethan Carter, 25, a freelance photographer chasing gigs across the country. I'd been on this relentless travel schedule for months, capturing everything from corporate headshots to indie music festivals. Life was a blur of terminals, coffee cups, and fleeting connections, but nothing prepared me for him. That first flight from Chicago, he was in seat 14B, 2 rows ahead, his head tilted toward the window like he was searching for something beyond the clouds. I didn't think much of it then, just another stranger in the endless churn of airports. But by the 3rd flight, when he boarded in Denver, his eyes locked with mine for a split second, and my stomach twisted. By the 6th, I was convinced he was following me. It started innocently enough. On that Chicago to Seattle leg, I'd been half asleep, my camera bag stuffed under the seat, when I noticed him. He was reading The Great Gatsby, his fingers tracing the pages with a care that felt almost reverent. I don't know why I fixated on him. Maybe it was the way he seemed so out of place, like he belonged in a quieter world. He didn't fidget or scroll through his phone like everyone else. He just existed, steady and deliberate. I caught myself staring and looked away, embarrassed, but the image of him stuck with me. The 2nd flight, from Seattle to Portland, I saw him again. Same guy, same coat, same quiet intensity. This time, he was in the gate area, sipping coffee and scribbling in a notebook. I told myself it was a coincidence. Airports are small worlds, right? People cross paths. But when he boarded my flight to Miami the next day, my pulse quickened. He didn't look at me this time, but I felt his presence, like a low hum in the back of my mind. I started wondering if I was paranoid. I mean, who tracks someone across the country? And why me? I'm nobody, just a guy with a camera and a knack for catching the right light. By the 4th flight, from Miami to Dallas, I was hyper-aware of him. He was in line at the gate, his suitcase scuffed but expensive, his posture relaxed but alert. I tried to focus on my work, editing photos on my laptop, but my eyes kept drifting to him. He didn't seem threatening, but there was something deliberate about him, like he knew exactly where he was going and why. I started imagining wild scenarios. Was he a private investigator? A journalist tailing me for some expose? Or, God forbid, some kind of stalker? My friends would have laughed at me for even thinking it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that his presence wasn't random. The 5th flight, Dallas to San Francisco, pushed me over the edge. I saw him at the airport bar, nursing a whiskey, his eyes scanning the crowd. When our gazes met, he didn't flinch or look away. Instead, he gave me a small nod, like we shared a secret. My heart pounded, and I fumbled with my phone, pretending to text someone. I wanted to confront him, to demand answers. But what would I even say? Hey, why are you on all my flights? It sounded ridiculous, even in my head. So I boarded the plane, my nerves frayed, and watched him take a seat 5 rows back. I spent the whole flight stealing glances, trying to piece together who he was and what he wanted. Now, here I was at JFK, flight number 6, and he was right there, leaning against that pillar like he'd been waiting for me. The terminal buzzed around us, families arguing, business travelers barking into phones, but it all faded when I saw him. He looked up from his book, and this time, he didn't look away. His eyes held mine, steady and unreadable, and for the first time, I felt something beyond suspicion. There was a pull, a quiet intensity that made my chest ache. I didn't know if I was scared or intrigued or both, but I knew I couldn't ignore him anymore. I grabbed my backpack and started toward him, my heart hammering. The crowd parted like a river, and every step felt heavier, like I was walking toward a truth I wasn't ready for. He straightened as I approached, slipping the book into his coat pocket. Up close, he was even more striking tall, maybe 28, with dark hair that fell just over his brow and a faint scar above his left eyebrow. His coat was tailored, but his boots were worn, like he'd walked 1,000 miles to get here. "Hey," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I've seen you before. Like, a lot." He didn't smile, but his eyes softened, just enough to make me pause. "I know," he said, his voice low and calm, like he'd been expecting this. "I'm Lucas." My breath caught. He knew my name wasn't part of the deal, but he'd just offered his, like it was a key to something bigger. I opened my mouth to ask why he was on every damn flight, why he was watching my butt before I could. The gate agent called for boarding. The moment broke, and Lucas stepped back, his expression unreadable again. "We'll talk," he said, almost a promise, before turning toward the gate. I stood there, rooted, as the crowd surged around me. My boarding pass was crumpled in my hand, and my mind was racing. 6 flights. Lucas. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a collision, and I was about to find out what it meant. The plane hummed as it climbed, but my mind was louder, replaying Lucas's voice. "We'll talk." I sat in 12A, window seat, my camera bag wedged under my feet, and stole glances down the aisle. He was there, of course, in 19C, his head bent over that same notebook. Every time I looked, I felt a jolt like I was trespassing on something private. But I couldn't stop. Who was he? And why did his presence feel like a puzzle I was meant to solve? The flight from JFK to Los Angeles was 5 hours. Plenty of time to overthink. I tried to distract myself with work, pulling up photos from my last Shoulda music festival in Miami, all vibrant colors and sweaty crowds. But my focus kept slipping. Lucas. His name rolled around in my head like a melody I couldn't shake. I didn't know him, but I felt like I should. It was irrational, but every glance at him made me question myself. Was I reading too much into this? Or was there something real here? Something I was too scared to name. When the drink cart rattled by, I ordered a coffee, hoping it would steady me. The flight attendant, a woman with a warm smile, handed me a cup and said, "Rough week." "Huh." I nodded, forcing a grin. If only she knew. I sipped the coffee, bitter and too hot, and glanced at Lucas again. He was writing, his pen moving in quick, deliberate strokes. I wondered what he was writing notes about me. A journal. A plan. The thought made my skin prickle. I pulled out my own notebook, a battered moleskin I used for shoot ideas and random thoughts. I scribbled, "Lucas. 6 flights." Not a coincidence. Writing it down made it real, and that scared me. I wasn't used to this feeling watched, feeling seen. My life was about capturing other people's moments, not being the subject of someone else's story. But Lucas was changing that, whether I liked it or not. The plane hit turbulence, and the seatbelt sign pinged on. I gripped my armrest, my heart racing for reasons beyond the shaky cabin. I looked at Lucas again, and this time, he was looking back. His eyes were steady, almost gentle, but there was something else there, regret. Maybe. Or longing. I couldn't tell. He closed his notebook and leaned back, breaking the moment. I felt exposed, like he'd seen something in me I didn't even know was there. When we landed in L.A., I lingered in my seat, letting the other passengers file out. I wanted to see what Lucas would do. He stood, grabbed his bag, and walked down the aisle without looking at me. But as he passed, his hand brushed my seat, and a folded piece of paper fell onto my lap. My breath caught. I waited until he was gone before unfolding it. In neat, slanted handwriting, it read, "Meet me at the baggage claim. Please." My hands shook as I stuffed the note into my pocket. This was the moment I could confront him or walk away. Part of me wanted to bolt, to pretend this was all in my head. But another part, the part that had been restless since Chicago, needed answers. I grabbed my bag and headed to baggage claim, my pulse hammering. The L.A. airport was a zoo, all bright lights and tired faces. I scanned the crowd, and there he was, standing by a pillar near the baggage belt. He looked different up close, less polished, more human. His coat was unbuttoned, his shirt slightly wrinkled, and that scar above his eyebrow caught the light. He saw me and straightened, his expression unreadable but soft. "Ethan," he said, like my name was something fragile. "Thanks for coming." "How do you know my name?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. "And why are you on every single one of my flights?" He hesitated, his eyes searching mine. "It's complicated. Can we sit somewhere?" "I'll explain." I wanted to push back, to demand answers right there, but something in his voice stopped me. It wasn't just confidence, it was vulnerability, like he was as scared as I was. Against my better judgment, I nodded. We found a quiet corner in a nearby coffee shop, the kind with sticky tables and overpriced lattes. I sat across from him, my hands clenched around my cup, and waited. "I'm not stalking you," he started, his voice low. "I promise. But I've been trying to find a way to talk to you since Chicago." "Why?" I asked, my throat tight. "Who are you?" He leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "My name's Lucas Harper. I'm 28, a writer freelance. Like you. I was on that first flight by chance, working on a story about cross-country travelers. But then I saw you. And," he paused, his jaw tightening, "I recognized you." "Recognized me?" I frowned. "We've never met." He looked down, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. "Not exactly. But I know someone you used to know. Someone who meant a lot to you." My heart stopped. There was only one person he could mean, someone I hadn't let myself think about in years. "Who?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lucas met my eyes, and for the first time, I saw pain there. "Caleb," he said. "Your brother." The name hit me like a punch. Caleb, my older brother, gone 3 years now, lost to a car accident that still felt like a bad dream. I hadn't said his name out loud in months, hadn't let myself feel the weight of it. How did Lucas know him? And why was he here, chasing me across the country? The coffee shop's hum faded as Lucas's words sank in. Caleb. My brother's name hung between us, heavy and sharp, like a blade I'd spent years trying to outrun. I leaned back in my chair, my hands trembling, and stared at Lucas, searching for a lie in his eyes. But all I saw was sincerity, tinged with something raw, like he was carrying his own grief. "How do you know Caleb?" I asked, my voice rough. "And don't give me vague answers. I need the truth." Lucas nodded, like he'd expected this. He took a deep breath, his fingers tightening around his coffee cup. "Caleb and I were friends. Close friends. We met in college, at NYU, 5 years ago. He paused, a faint smile flickering. He was magnetic. Always talking about you, his little brother, the photographer with big dreams." I swallowed hard, my chest tight. Caleb had been my anchor 4 years older, always the one who knew what to say, who made the world feel less heavy. When he died, it was like the light went out. I'd thrown myself into work, into movement, to keep from drowning in the loss. Hearing his name now, from a stranger who wasn't a stranger, felt like reopening a wound. Why didn't he ever mention you? I asked, my suspicion flaring. Caleb had been open about his life, his friends. If Lucas was so close, I would have known. Lucas's expression faltered, and he looked away, his jaw tight. We weren't just friends, he said quietly. Caleb and I were together for almost 2 years. The words hit like a shockwave. My brother, gay. It didn't make sense. Caleb had dated women, brought them to family dinners, laughed about his terrible Tinder dates. He'd never hinted at anything else. But as I stared at Lucas, the pieces started to shift. Caleb's late-night calls, his guarded smiles when I asked about his life in New York, it all felt different now. You're lying, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. He would have told me. Lucas shook his head, his eyes steady but sad. He wanted to. He was going to. That summer before the accident. He was scared. Ethan. Not of you, but of how your parents would take it. He said they were traditional, that they wouldn't understand. I thought of our parents' mom with her church groups, Dad with his quiet expectations. They loved us, but they had their limits. I'd always known that, even if I didn't want to admit it. Had Caleb felt trapped, hiding who he was? The thought made my stomach churn. Why are you here? I asked, my voice breaking. Why follow me across the country? Lucas leaned forward, his voice low but urgent. Because Caleb left something for you. Something he wanted you to have, but he never got the chance to give it. I've been carrying it for 3 years, trying to find the right moment. When I saw you on that flight from Chicago, I knew it was fate. I stared at him, my mind racing. What is it? What did he leave? Lucas reached into his bag and pulled out a small, leather-bound journal, its edges worn from time. This, he said, sliding it across the table. It's his. He wrote it for you. My hands shook as I touched the journal, its weight heavier than it should have been. I didn't open it, not yet. I wasn't ready. Instead, I looked at Lucas, trying to read him. Why didn't you just mail it? Why chase me across 6 flights? He hesitated, his eyes dropping to the table. Because I needed to see you. To know you. Caleb talked about you like you were his world. And I guess I wanted to feel close to him again. The honesty in his voice disarmed me. I wanted to be angry, to push him away, but I couldn't. There was something about Lucas, his quiet intensity, his grief that felt like a mirror to my own. I didn't know what to say, so I just sat there, clutching the journal, my heart pounding. The airport speakers crackled, announcing another flight. Lucas glanced at his watch and stood. I have to catch a connection, he said. But I'll be in L.A. for a few days. If you want to talk, I'm at the Westin near the airport. Room 412. He scribbled his number on a napkin and slid it toward me. Then he was gone, disappearing into the crowd like he'd never been there. I sat alone, the journal in my hands, my mind a storm of questions. Caleb had been in love with this man. My brother had a secret life I'd never known. And now, I held the key to it. I opened the journal, my fingers trembling. The first page was in Caleb's handwriting, messy but unmistakable. Ethan, if you're reading this, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I love you. Tears stung my eyes, and I snapped the book shut. Not here. Not now. That night, in my hotel room, I read the first few entries. Caleb wrote about his life in New York, his fears, his dreams. He wrote about Lucas, how they met at a poetry reading, how Lucas made him feel alive in a way he'd never known. It was raw, honest, and it broke my heart. My brother had been carrying this alone, and I'd been too caught up in my own world to notice. I thought about Lucas, about his eyes, his voice. There was something magnetic about him, something that made me want to know more. But I was scared, too scared of what the journal would reveal, scared of what Lucas meant to me. Because somewhere, deep down, I felt it, a pull, a connection, that went beyond Caleb. The L.A. sun was relentless, pouring through my hotel window like it was trying to burn away my doubts. I sat on the edge of the bed, Caleb's journal open in my lap, its pages filled with his voice funny, aching, alive. Every word felt like a conversation we never got to have, and it hurt more than I could have imagined. Last night, I'd read until my eyes burned. Caleb wrote about his fear of coming out, how he'd practiced the words 100 times but never said them. He wrote about Lucas, too, how their relationship had been a quiet rebellion against the world's expectations. Lucas sees me, he'd written. Not the version I show everyone else, but the real me. I kept picturing them together, laughing in some tiny New York apartment, and it made me ache for a brother I thought I'd known. I hadn't called Lucas yet. His number sat on the napkin by my bedside, taunting me. Part of me wanted to meet him, to dig deeper, but another part was terrified. What if this changed everything? What if I couldn't handle the truth about Caleb or about myself? Because the more I read, the more I felt something stirring, something I'd buried under years of work and avoidance. Lucas wasn't just a messenger. He was a spark, and I wasn't sure I was ready for the fire. I needed air. I grabbed my camera and headed to Venice Beach, hoping the ocean and the chaos of the boardwalk would clear my head. The place was alive, street performers, skaters, tourists snapping selfies. I shot a few frames, capturing a busker strumming a guitar, his voice raw and soulful. But my mind kept drifting to Lucas, to his steady gaze, to the way he'd said my name like it mattered. By noon, I was restless. I sat on a bench, the journal in my bag, and pulled out the napkin with Lucas's number. My thumb hovered over my phone, hesitating. What was I afraid of? The truth. Or him? Before I could overthink it, I dialed. Ethan. His voice was warm, surprised. I wasn't sure you'd call. Yeah. Well, I wasn't sure either, I said, trying to sound casual. Can we meet? I have questions. He didn't hesitate. I'm free now. There's a diner near the Westin. The Blue Wave. Meet me there in an hour. I agreed and hung up, my heart racing. The diner was a short walk from the beach, all chrome and neon, the kind of place that felt frozen in the 50s. Lucas was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, a coffee in front of him. He looked up as I approached, and his smile was small but genuine, like he was relieved I'd shown up. Thanks for coming, he said as I slid into the booth. I know this is a lot. Yeah, it is, I said, my voice sharper than I meant. I read some of the journal. Caleb, he loved you. Why didn't I know about you? Lucas's smile faded, replaced by something softer, sadder. He wanted to protect you. He said you were the one person who never judged him, and he didn't want to risk that. He was going to tell you that summer, after he told your parents. But then, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. The accident. A drunk driver. A rainy night. And Caleb was gone. I looked down at the table, my throat tight. What was he like? I asked. With you, I mean. Lucas's eyes lit up, like I'd given him permission to remember. He was alive, always laughing, always finding something beautiful in the chaos. He dragged me to art galleries or late-night diners, talking about life like it was this big, messy adventure. He made me feel like I could be myself. No apologies. I nodded, recognizing my brother in his words. Caleb had always been the one to pull me out of my shell, to push me to chase my dreams. But hearing Lucas talk about him, I realized how much Caleb had held back, even from me. And you? I asked, my voice quieter. Why do this? Why track me down? Lucas leaned back, his fingers tracing the edge of his cup. Because I loved him. And because he loved you. When I saw you on that flight, it felt like a sign. I'd been carrying that journal for years, not knowing how to give it to you. I guess I was scared, too. Scared of what? I pressed. He met my eyes, and for a moment, the world stopped. Of you, he said simply. Of what you'd think of me. Of what this would mean. My breath caught. There it was again, that pull, that spark. I didn't know what to do with it, so I changed the subject. What's in the rest of the journal? Is it all about you too? Lucas shook his head. It's about you. Mostly. His hopes for you. His regrets. He wanted you to know who he was. All of him. And he wanted you to be free to be yourself, too. I didn't know what to say. The journal was still in my bag, unopened since last night. I was scared to keep reading. Scared of what I'd find not just about Caleb, but about me. Because the more I sat across from Lucas, the more I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in years. Attraction. Desire. And it terrified me. Lucas seemed to sense it. He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of mine. You don't have to read it all at once, he said. Take your time. I'll be here if you need me. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. We finished our coffee in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was like we were both holding space for Caleb, for the past, for whatever this was becoming. When we parted, he gave me a look that lingered, like he saw something in me I wasn't ready to see myself. Back in my hotel room, I couldn't sit still. The journal sat on the desk, its leather cover taunting me. Lucas's words echoed in my head. He wanted you to be free to be yourself. What did that mean? Did Caleb know something about me that I didn't? I paced, my camera in my hands, flipping through photos on the screen, anything to avoid opening that journal again. But I couldn't avoid it forever. I sat down, flipped to where I'd left off, and read. Caleb's words were a mix of love and fear, hope and doubt. He wrote about coming out to our parents, how he'd planned to do it over dinner, how he'd rehearsed every word. I want them to know me, he wrote. But I'm scared they'll only see what they want to see. My chest ached. I wished I'd been there. Wished I could have told him it didn't matter, that I'd love him no matter what. Then I reached a page that stopped me cold. Ethan, you're braver than you think. I see you hiding, just like I did. Don't be afraid to love who you love. My hands shook as I read it again. Was he talking about me? Had he seen something in me I'd buried so deep I barely recognized it? I'd always pushed those thoughts away the way my heart raced around certain guys. The way I'd avoided relationships because they felt too complicated. I told myself I was too busy, too focused on work. But maybe I was just scared. I thought about Lucas, about the way his eyes softened when he looked at me. It wasn't just about Caleb. There was something between us, something I didn't know how to name. I'd spent so long running from grief, from myself, that the idea of facing it now felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. The next day, I texted Lucas. Can we meet again? I read more. He replied within minutes, suggesting a park near the hotel. When I got there, he was sitting on a bench, a book in his hands, The Great Gatsby again. He looked up as I approached, and his smile was like a lifeline. You read it, he said, not a question. Yeah, I said, sitting beside him. It's a lot. He knew things about me I didn't even know myself. Lucas nodded, his eyes gentle. He was good at that. Seeing people. I took a deep breath, the words spilling out before I could stop them. Did he ever say anything about me? About who I am? Lucas's expression softened, and he set the book down. He said you were searching, not just for the perfect shot, but for yourself. He thought you were afraid to let people in, to let yourself feel. I looked away, my throat tight. He was right. I'd built walls around myself, kept everyone at a distance. But sitting here with Lucas, those walls felt fragile, like they could crumble with a single touch. I don't know what I'm doing, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what this is. Lucas leaned closer, his voice low. You don't have to know. Not yet. Just let yourself feel it. I met his eyes, and for the first time, I didn't look away. There was something electric between us, something that made my heart race and my skin hum. I wanted to reach for him, to close the distance, but fear held me back. What if I was wrong? What if this was just grief, or loneliness, or some twisted need to hold on to Caleb? Before I could decide, Lucas's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face tightening. I have to go, he said, standing. Work thing. But I'm here tomorrow. Can we talk then? I nodded, disappointed but relieved. Yeah. Tomorrow. He gave me a long look, like he wanted to say more, then turned and walked away. I sat there, the journal in my bag, my heart pounding. Caleb's words echoed in my mind. Don't be afraid to love who you love. For the first time, I wondered if I could. The park was quiet the next morning, the air crisp with the promise of fall. I sat on the same bench, waiting for Lucas, my nerves a tangled mess. I'd spent the night reading more of Caleb's journal, each page peeling back layers of my brother I'd never known. He wrote about love, about fear, about the freedom he'd found with Lucas. I want that for Ethan, he'd written. I want him to live without hiding. I wasn't sure I could, but I wanted to try for Caleb, for myself. Lucas arrived a few minutes later, a coffee in each hand. He handed me one, his fingers brushing mine, and I felt that spark again, stronger this time. You okay? He asked, sitting beside me. Not really, I said, managing a small smile. But I'm here. He nodded, like he understood. What did you read? I took a sip of coffee, buying time. More about you. About how happy you made him. And about me. He thought I was hiding something. I think he was right. Lucas's eyes softened, but he didn't push. Instead, he waited, giving me space to find the words. I took a deep breath. I've never been honest with myself. About who I am, who I want. I think Caleb knew before I did. Lucas leaned closer, his voice gentle. What do you think he knew? I hesitated, my heart pounding. That I'm not straight. That I've been running from it my whole life. Saying it out loud felt like jumping off that cliff. I braced for judgment, for rejection, but Lucas just nodded, his expression warm. Thank you for telling me, he said. That takes courage. I laughed, a shaky sound. I don't feel courageous. I feel like a mess. You're allowed to be a mess, he said, his voice steady. Caleb was, too. We all are. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of my confession settling between us. It wasn't just about Caleb anymore. It was about me, about Lucas, about the way my heart raced when he looked at me. I wanted to say more, to ask him what this was, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, Lucas spoke. I don't know what this is, Ethan, he said, echoing my thoughts. But I feel it, too. I've felt it since that first flight. My breath caught. Why didn't you say anything? He smiled, a little sad. Because I was scared. Because you're Caleb's brother, and I didn't want to mess this up. But every time I saw you, it got harder to stay quiet. I looked at him, really looked at him, the scar above his eyebrow, the way his hands fidgeted with his coffee cup, the quiet strength in his eyes. He wasn't just a ghost from Caleb's past. He was real, and he was here, and he saw me. Before I could second-guess myself, I reached for his hand. His fingers were warm, steady, and when they closed around mine, something in me settled. It wasn't an answer. Not yet. But it was a start. We talked for hours. About Caleb. About ourselves. About the lives we'd built to keep the pain at bay. Lucas told me about his writing. How he'd been working on a novel inspired by Caleb. A story about love and loss and second chances. I told him about my photography. How I'd been chasing moments, but never really living them. It felt like we were building something. A fragile bridge between our past and whatever came next. When the sun started to set, Lucas walked me back to my hotel. At the door, he hesitated, his eyes searching mine. Can I see you again? He asked. Yeah, I said, my voice soft but certain. I'd like that. He smiled, and for the first time, I let myself feel the warmth of it. As he walked away, I knew this wasn't just about Caleb anymore. It was about us. The next few days in L.A. were a blur of shoots and late-night talks with Lucas. We met at coffee shops, parks, even a quiet bookstore where he showed me his favorite poetry collections. Each moment felt like a step toward something new, something I'd never let myself want before. But with every step, the fear crept in, fear of what this meant. Fear of what people would think. Fear of losing the life I'd known. Caleb's journal became my anchor. I read it in stolen moments. Each entry a piece of him I hadn't known. He wrote about his dreams for me. How he wanted me to find love. To live without shame. You're stronger than you know, he wrote. Don't let fear win. I wanted to believe him, but it wasn't easy. I'd spent so long hiding, convincing myself I didn't need anyone. That letting Lucas in felt like unraveling. One night, we ended up at a rooftop bar overlooking the city. The lights stretched out like a sea of stars, and Lucas looked at me like I was one of them. What are you thinking? He asked, his voice soft over the hum of the crowd. I hesitated, my fingers tracing the rim of my glass. I'm thinking, I don't know how to do this. Be this person. The one Caleb thought I could be. Lucas reached for my hand, his touch grounding me. You're already him, he said. You're just figuring out what that means. I looked at him, my heart pounding. What if I mess it up? What if I'm not ready? He smiled, his eyes warm. Then we mess it up together. No pressure, Ethan. Just us. His words broke something in me, a wall I'd built to keep the world out. I leaned closer, my breath catching, and before I could overthink it, I kissed him. It was soft, tentative, but it felt like coming home. When we pulled back, his eyes were bright, like he'd been waiting for this as long as I had. I'm scared, I admitted, my voice barely audible. Me too, he said, his hand still in mine. But I'm here. We stayed on that rooftop until the bar closed, talking, laughing, stealing glances like we were teenagers. For the first time, I felt free not just from grief, but from the weight of who I thought I had to be. Lucas wasn't just a link to Caleb. He was a chance to be myself, to love without hiding. But the real world was waiting. I had a flight to Chicago the next day. Another job. Another city. Lucas was staying in L.A. for a writing deadline. The thought of leaving him, of going back to my nomadic life, made my chest ache. Come with me, I said impulsively as we walked back to my hotel. To Chicago. Just see what happens. Lucas laughed, a sound that warmed me. Tempting. But I've got to finish this draft. How about I meet you in Chicago next week? It wasn't a promise, but it was enough. We said goodnight with another kiss. This one deeper, more certain. As I watched him walk away, I felt a mix of hope and fear. This was new, uncharted, but it was mine. Chicago was gray and cold, a stark contrast to L.A.'s warmth. I threw myself into work, shooting a corporate event, but my mind was on Lucas. We texted constantly, his messages a lifeline across the distance. Miss you, he wrote one night, and I stared at the words, my heart racing. I missed him, two more than I'd expected. Caleb's journal was nearly finished now. The last entries were about his hopes for the future. For us. I want Ethan to find what I found with Lucas. He wrote. Someone who sees him, who loves him for who he is. I cried reading it. Not just for Caleb, but for myself. He'd seen me, even when I couldn't see myself. And now, with Lucas, I was starting to. When Lucas arrived in Chicago, I met him at the airport, my nerves buzzing. He stepped off the plane, his coat slung over his arm, and when he saw me, his smile lit up the terminal. We hugged, and it felt like the world clicked into place. We spent the weekend exploring the city museums, pizza joints, walks along the lake. With every moment, I felt myself opening up, letting go of the fear that had held me back. Lucas was patient, steady, but there was a fire in him, too. A passion that made me want to be braver, bolder. On our last night, we sat on a bench by Lake Michigan, the city skyline glittering behind us. I took his hand, my heart steady for the first time in years. I don't know what comes next, I said, but I wanted to be with you. Lucas's eyes softened, and he squeezed my hand. Me too, he said. We'll figure it out. Together. I thought about Caleb, about the journal, about the journey that had brought me here. 6 flights. One truth, love wasn't something to hide from. It was something to fight for, to hold on to. Lucas wasn't just a coincidence. He was a beginning. As we sat there, the wind cold but the moment warm, I felt Caleb's presence, like he was smiling down on us. I'd found what he wanted for minute, just love, but the courage to live it. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid.